Good morning. Welcome to the Committee on Special Populations. Today is Tuesday, April 27th, and we'll start off with introductions. I'm Rebecca Smondrowski. I'm the chair, and I represent District 2 on the Board of Education. Dr. Daca?
Judy Daca, District 1.
Good morning, everyone. Carla Silvestris, School Board Member at Large.
Thank you. We also have with us several staff members who will introduce themselves at the time of their presentation. My first order of business is the informal summary. Do either of you have any comments, concerns, or changes need to be made? Nope. Okay, then we will approve those. And I think other than that, we will get started. So today we are going to be starting with the topic of dual enrollment. And that is something that, as I understand, is going to be a two-part discussion. So we're starting with our first part today. And I will introduce, let's see, I guess will Ms. Hazel be starting off? Or
we'll
Mr.
go right
Murphy?
into Mr. Murphy. Yeah.
I was going to say, or Mr. Murphy, okay?
Okay, thank you. Good morning. Scott Murphy, Director of College and Career Readiness. As you said, Ms. Smondrowski, we're here today for part one of at least two-part, maybe more, conversation around dual enrollment. What we thought we would do today is provide an overview of all of the various ways that students access dual enrollment programs, provide a snapshot of current enrollment trends and data, and the most time we'll spend on just the process itself, how students apply, what criteria there may be for dual enrollment programs and what that actually looks like. Joining me is Dr. Genevieve Floyd, who's Supervisor of Career and Post-Secondary Partnerships, who works directly with colleagues at Montgomery College in all things dual enrollment. So if we could go ahead and pull up the slides, please. So first, just to kind of level set for everyone, if go to the next slide, and for the public, when we talk about dual enrollment, what we mean is that high school students are concurrently enrolled as an MCPS student and also as a Montgomery College student at the same time, taking college courses that provide dual credit. So it's providing credit towards high school graduation, and it's also providing credits towards on a college transcript that can be used towards a degree at Montgomery College or transferred to another post-secondary institution. So that's what we mean when we say dual, because it's both high school and college at the same time. So we'd like to talk about the various programs and various ways that dual enrollment operates here in MCPS. First is what we call just general dual enrollment. This is available in all MCPS high schools, available to all MCPS students. And this is when high school students take a course or two, up to four, typically in areas of interest through their local high school. Each high school has a dual enrollment program assistant who assists in the counseling office to get students signed up and often work on a schedule that often, if there's enough enrollment in a local school, will have the college course when we were in person actually offered on the high school campus. Currently, the courses are all virtual, but historically, many of these general dual enrollment courses have been offered on the high school campus, taught by Montgomery College faculty, and built into the structure of the school day so that schools can fit it in, students can fit it into their schedules. That's usually students taking a course or two in areas of interest. Up a level from that is a newer program that is called Jumpstart. And this is a more specific pathway, more college credits, and really more specific to a particular degree program. So instead of just taking a course or two in areas of interest, this puts students more on a pathway in a particular major or degree area for Jumpstart to work towards a degree in a particular field. So these are the first two big general buckets of dual enrollment that are available in each one of our high schools. Then we have specific degree programs that start on the next slide. These are more holistic, sort of comprehensive pathway programs that we have in some of our high schools. The first is what's called P-TECH, Pathways in Technology Early College High School. This is at Clarksburg High School. It's now in its third year. For this program, it actually begins with an 8th grade application and begins in 9th grade. Students begin taking college courses typically in grade 10, but the support, the readiness, the networking pathway begins in grade 9, and it's a full 4-year comprehensive pathway that has internships, partnerships, summer programs all embedded throughout the program, culminating in industry certification in IT, networking, as well as an associate's degree. Students can apply from various areas to access this program, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Other specific degree program we often talk about is called middle college. This program is at Northwood High School and Northwest High School. Students begin taking college courses in grade 10. There's a focus in engineering as well as general studies here in these two programs. And similarly to the other programs, the college courses may be actually on the campus of the high school, which is often the case when we're in person, as well as the Montgomery College campus. So by senior year, students are typically taking most of their courses on campus at Montgomery College. Next slide is another fast-growing program we have, and it's known as early college. This is when, beginning in grade 11, student attends Montgomery College basically full-time. So they're completing all of their graduation requirements through college coursework at Montgomery College and are basically a full-time college student starting in grade 11. They do not take any courses at their local high school. All of those requirements are met through the college courses, but they do continue to access support services, their counselor, extracurriculars at the local high school while they're enrolled in early college. This aims to earn an associate's degree upon high school graduation with 13 different degree programs on all 3 campuses of the college. So a little bit of data, next slide, shows the expanding enrollment over the past 3 years. Back in 2018-19, there were 800 and some students in MCPS taking advantage of this. Last year grew to 1,100, and this current year, all virtual, we now have over 1,800 students currently enrolled this year in dual enrollment. And you can see that exponential growth over the past 3 years we expect to continue with the need really to ensure access for each one of our student focus groups listed here. Next slide is the numbers of students who are actually earning an associate's degree upon high school graduation or 50 or more credits, college credits. You can see when we began this program in 18-19, the first cohort of students to come through, there were 14. Last year in the class of 2020, it jumped to 42. And this year we're projecting about 125 students to finish high school, not only with a high school diploma, but also an associate's degree. Because of the various programs I mentioned earlier, there's now a tremendous pipeline of students who are currently in programs in 9th, 10th, 11th grade. These numbers here of students who will earn an associate's degree at graduation, it will continue to expand exponentially. We will have several hundred graduates each year as we go forward. I would now like to turn it over to Dr. Floyd, who's going to talk a little bit more about how we work with Montgomery College to have processes that allow students to access the programs, how applications work, and how some of the criteria fits in for different programs. Next slide, and Dr. Floyd.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Good morning, board members. Access to the dual enrollment options vary slightly by program. As for the general dual enrollment, including the Jumpstart to College pathways, access is the same. a 2.75 unweighted GPA for juniors and lower grades, and a 2.5 unweighted GPA for seniors is required. Historically, students would also complete an assessment such as the SAT or the Accuplacer. However, with the onset of the pandemic last spring, all assessments have been waived and are not currently required for accessing a college course, unless students are interested in taking a higher level math course or pursuing a higher level degree. And in those instances, students would need to take a college placement assessment. As it relates to guidance and application support, all students meet with their counselors to discuss what's needed for high school graduation and their dual enrollment options. Students pursuing a dual enrollment path must also meet with their dual enrollment or their dual enrollment program assistant, we call them DEPAs, who would assist the students in the application process. As most parents, guardians, any of us know who've applied for college, the application process is really not a simple one. And so every high school has these DEPAs to assist with the MC application process. And that process includes applying to Montgomery College, creating online accounts, obtaining approval from the parent, the principal, the counselor, completing an academic orientation, reviewing college course offerings and the prerequisites, registering for appropriate courses, and then satisfying any financial obligation that they may have. And once our students are enrolled, they are expected to maintain a C or higher before registering for any subsequent courses. Next slide, please. So the access to the degree programs. Access to the degree programs also vary slightly. However, for P-TECH and the middle college programs, the access is the same. Any grade 8 student can apply through an interest-based process for the regional program, and openings for the local students is just general, open access for those students. For students outside the attendance areas of the high schools, there is a centrally managed application process, and a random lottery is held when there's more interest than seats. So college preparation really begins in grade 9, the orientations, the academic prep, summer enrichment, but the college courses begin in grade 10. And if a student is not college ready in grade 10, that may be delayed and it may begin in grade 11. Next slide, please. Access to early college. So while the degree-based programs on the high school are the same, the early college program, it's not interest-based, it really is college-ready based. Students must be college-ready in order to access these programs. So they apply in grade 10 through a centrally managed process, but they also have to have a 2.5 unweighted GPA. They have to pass their state assessments. They must be on track to graduate high school. And they also complete an application process that Montgomery College has established, and Algebra 2 or higher, and that depends on the degree program of interest. Students meet the MC prerequisites for their degree programs, for the courses, and then they complete a summer orientation and other summer requirements. And they don't begin their college courses until the junior year, full-time in the fall. Next slide, please. So tuition fees and some other costs also varies by dual enrollment options. For the general dual enrollment and Jumpstart to College pathways and the middle college programs, the cost structure is the same. For the FY21, the average cost for tuition and fees, it's $403.05 per 3-credit course. There are some additional financial supports that are in place for some students that could result in no cost through the MC's financial aid options. As for P-TECH, there is no cost. P-TECH is free. It's a grant-funded program. MCPS supplements the cost of the P-TECH program through grants. In addition to the tuition and fees, other costs such as textbooks or equipment, instructional materials, transportation, etc., are covered for the P-TECH students. There is no cost for P-TECH. Regarding early college, there is a cost for non-farm students and fees. For farms, we cover the tuition, we cover the fees. For farms, we cover tuition, but fees can vary between $600 and $700 per semester. In addition, MCPS also covers textbooks and instructional materials for all students who are enrolled in the early college program. Next slide, please. So all duly enrolled students remained enrolled in their high school, and they are assigned to their high school counselor, and they have access to all of the supports and services through their local schools. But since they are also Montgomery College students, they have access to a variety of MC supports and services as well, such as those that are listed, which includes disability support services, financial assistance, career academic counseling, advising by major, assessment testing, new student orientation, academic learning centers, embedded classroom support for select courses, and one-on-one individualized academic coaching, dedicated staff in dual enrollment office and the early college office, as well as laptops and meals are also supported or provided to support students who are in need. Next slide, please. So there are many benefits to dual enrollment options. However, over the years, we have addressed, and in some cases continue to address, some barriers. And in no particular order, we have 6 of them that are listed here that continues to be a part of our collaborative work with our MC partners. Assessments. Assessment, specifically the College Board Accuplacer, was one of the primary tools used to assess the college readiness of our students. And over the last several years, multiple measures of college readiness have been identified. And this includes grades in select courses, as well as using the student's unweighted GPA to deem them ready. And by using multiple measures, more students have been granted access to college courses, and that barrier continues to be dismantled. Costs, as noted earlier, for a 3-credit course, the cost at Montgomery College is approximately $400, a little over $400 for tuition and fees. Now, this same course taken at the University of Maryland College Park is a little over $1,500. And if taken at a private institution such as George Washington University, it's a little over $5,000. So the financial savings are obvious. However, for some of our students, especially students who are not in our free or discounted degree programs or who do not qualify for financial assistance, even the cost of $403.05 is a barrier. So we have addressed it for some, but it still remains a barrier for some of our students. Mathematics, math skills, math readiness continues to be a challenge for some of our students interested in STEM fields. Students interested in these higher level courses are not always prepared. They don't have the math skills required to access these courses. So early awareness, early preparation are truly essential to addressing this academic barrier that exists for some of our students. Social emotional well-being, it's not a barrier, but we have found it can hinder persistence and continuance in college courses. So some of the students are, in this last year, have experienced some challenges navigating the virtual college experience, and it has been concerning for many of them. So we've worked very closely, our MC staff with our MC counselors, to support our students to make sure that they are well and to respond quickly to any social emotional needs that we hear, that we learn about. So that's a rising concern that we're starting to address as we see more students experiencing some stress with the college courses in this environment, particularly during this past year. Access to the degree programs. is a barrier for many because of geography and capacity. The degree programs, as noted earlier, they are limited to 3 high schools and the MC campuses. Hence, the location of the programs may not work for all of our students who are interested in the program. So in addition, some of the degree programs have caps, and so they're not able to access as a result of capacity. To address this barrier, MCPS and our MC partners are in discussions to implement a virtual or online degree options this fall. While some of our students have been challenged navigating the virtual space, as previously mentioned, the overwhelming majority of our students have thrived. We've had a 94% pass rate over the last few semesters. So we know that many of our students are truly capable of succeeding online. So the virtual option will open access to degree programs for students from all 25 high schools. So we're very hopeful and excited about this potential opportunity. More information on that will be coming forth in the next few months. And finally, diversity. We know it is important to make sure that all of our students see themselves as college capable, and this option is available to a diverse group of students. So annually, we communicate with over 27,000 rising 10th, 11th, and 12th graders with qualifying GPAs to make sure that they are aware of this option. And special efforts are in place to ensure that students see college as obtainable and that dual enrollment is a great way to experience college while they're with us. And these efforts to increase diversity includes focusing on special populations such as our eligible ESOL, our special ed students, and including outreach on multiple platforms and in home languages, and partnering with our internal colleagues within student family support and engagement, our ESOL teams, our special education teams, to make sure that they support the outreach efforts and are included in addressing the stigmas and the barriers that may address, so that all students who are college ready and interested can access these opportunities. Next slide, please. So in increasing diversity, access, and enrollment actually speaks to the many outreach efforts that we've employed in collaboration with and separate from Montgomery College partners. And these include information sessions hosted at the college, hosted at the high school, and when in person, those were always standing room only events speaking to the interests that exist amongst our families. In addition to presentations, we presented to the African American Student Achievement Action Group specific outreach to ESOL families and students with translations printed in various languages and video translations, MCCPTA presentations, that should be MCPS TV Spanish specials. But Montgomery College has also done a great deal of outreach to our families who speak Spanish to promote dual enrollment options, as well as they've outreached to all of our families in grades 8 through 12 via various platforms. And we've also done outreach and presentations for NAACP Parent Council. We presented to our counselors at the middle school and the high school level, our school-based staff, our resource teachers, as well as presentations to special education and our transition services teams, and much more to increase and assist our families in making an informed decision when they're thinking about dual enrollment options and opportunities. Next slide, please. So anyone who's interested in learning about dual enrollment, all they have to do is search our website, search the MCPS website or the MC's website, and just search dual enrollment, and they'll find a plethora of information, videos, print materials, and frequently asked questions to assist them in learning more about what we have done, what we're doing, and the opportunities that exist for our students, in addition to video presentations. And that concludes the presentation at this point. Thank you.
So thank you very much for that. If we can take down the slides, yeah, there you go. I sent my colleagues a message to let them know that I could actually see them, so if they'd wanted to interrupt, but you were so close to the end. I figured I'd let you get through it. I'm going to start with just a couple clarifying questions before I ask my actual questions, and let my colleagues jump in before me. But just to clarify a couple things, which programs do you graduate from high school with also your college degree, your associate's degree? Because I thought it didn't sound like with the associates that it was only the early college, that the regular associate's degree programs did not give you a degree. Did I misunderstand that?
No, I can take that. Actually, we have 3 opportunities from which students can graduate with an associate's degree. P-TECH, and that's at Clarksburg, the middle college options at Northwest and Northwood, and the early college option. Oh, okay. It sounded like the only one you were talking about the degree was with the early college. And then my other just clarifying question is the cost that you mentioned. So it reads that the students pay course fees, which are between $600 and $700 per semester. Is that total per semester, or is that per course per semester? And that's with the early college program, and that's total per semester. Okay. And non-farm students, we pay the fees for the farm students. Right. So you said, what's the total cost for a student who from start to AA? So for early college, if they are non-farms, it could range from $2,400 to $2,800. Okay. The early college program. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So I'll jump to my colleagues before I go into real questions about the programs. Dr. Daka, do you have any questions or comments?
Sorry. Yes, I do. Just one question on slide 5. Students have to complete all their high school graduation requirements. So I know they have to have English for 4 years, so they can take an English course at Montgomery College to satisfy that. And does it have to be a specific one, or what is it?
Yes, they take their remaining graduation requirements, such as English or math, at the college for the remaining graduation requirements. I'll let Dr. Floyd answer whether it is a specific English course or if there are options. There are options, definitely.
Thank you.
Ms. Silvestri.
Thank you. Great. This is fantastic work. I really have seen how the program has progressed, and I'm very happy to hear that you are exploring a virtual option. At our NAACP meeting last week, one of the parents asked if that was going to continue because she felt that it had given her student access that she didn't have before. So just urge you to continue to do outreach to our farms families, because I see there are lower numbers in the chart there than other populations, and they're the ones that could. They're the ones that could get this for free, correct? And I think it's so important to give kids the opportunity to take a college course just to demystify what it's like to go to college, or just to give them exposure. Okay, now I took a college class. This is not that big of a deal. I can continue for those that are not convinced that they're going to go that route. So, question I had is, if a student does need financial aid, does the college help them complete the FAFSA, or they just do that on their own?
So for dual enrollment, the financial assistance is actually through a high school grant that Montgomery College provides for families who make less than $100,000. But in completing FAFSA, we have our high school staff who support students in that effort, and they have access to college support as well. But the FAFSA was not used for the dual enrollment.
Okay.
Okay.
And Dr. Floyd, what is your thinking around why we don't have as many farm students participating as maybe we should?
And to your point, we have done a lot of outreach to increase that numbers. In fact, when you look at the percentages, it's one of the largest percent population that has participated or that's participating now. However, there's a lot more work to do. So I do believe it's just demystifying some of those myths, some of those concerns, increasing awareness about the financial opportunity, and making sure that we support our students through the process. So as much as we can continue to get out and tap into those populations that you've mentioned, I believe we will see those numbers continue to grow and increase, particularly when we start increasing access to all 25 high schools for these degree programs. So I do believe that we will see those numbers grow.
And can you speak to the courses that they take at Montgomery College are transferable to other universities?
Great question. In fact, we work very closely with Montgomery College. We have identified 475 courses that students can take, and they are all transferable to other institutions in the state. In fact, our benchmark is the University of Maryland College Park, and about 98% of our courses are transferable to that institution alone, in addition to others. Now, I will share that whenever students take college courses, just as with every other AP or IB course, they do need to do some research to make sure the college of choice will accept these credits. But we have really done our due diligence to make sure that they are transferable courses. They can transfer to a four-year institution, one or more within the state. And UMCP is our benchmark. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you. That was actually one of my questions as well, because I've heard a lot of concerns about the credits not transferring. In follow-up to your response to that, who assists them with making sure that the credits that they will transfer and that they are, what they need to fulfill a requirement for a four-year degree? And even if the credit transfers, in other words, making sure. So does that fall under Montgomery College, or does that fall under us?
Our counselors continue to support our dually enrolled students with accessing four-year institutions. However, Montgomery College also provides transfer advising to support students when they are interested in pursuing additional colleges as well. So the students have support on both ends, our high school counselors and Montgomery College advising and transfer staff.
Okay, that's good to know. I know my daughter, she was hoping to have taken some courses at Montgomery College during this pandemic when she was home, and struggled. She had to use her University of Mississippi counselor to help her get it figured out because she couldn't navigate it through Montgomery College. So I was just concerned that our students have the support that they need, because it's not always as easy as I think maybe adults think it is, or sometimes it sounds. I'm very happy to hear about the virtual opportunities and that we continue to look into those, because it would really be nice for all of our students to have the opportunity, regardless of which high school they attend, to participate in this. Is this something, if a student currently, unless this changes next year because of the virtual world, if this is something that we have a student who doesn't attend one of the aforementioned high schools, can students apply for a COSA to a school that does provide this? I know I'm on the policy committee, and we've done some work on making it so that students can transfer based on areas of interest, but I just wanted to know what your thoughts are on that.
This would be one of those programs that we manage centrally through an application process, so separate from a COSA or a transfer. So for the middle college programs and P-TECH, students apply in 8th grade, and a lottery is run to invite students based on limited seats for students not in the attendance area. And so by the time that application process goes through and the lotteries run, it is completely filled up with a wait list. And so that would then preclude any space available for transfers.
Okay. And why would we have a wait list, if you don't mind my asking? Like, is that because Montgomery College's classes are too full?
It's mainly because we are opening up available seats to students outside the local attendance area. So at Clarksburg High School, for example, there are 32 students coming from outside the Clarksburg attendance area to attend the program. And so currently, that's the capacity each year to be able to have out-of-area students who are not in the enrollment projection and part of the attendance area at Clarksburg. So over time, there are then over 100 students in the program that are coming from outside the attendance area.
Okay, I guess what I'm asking is I don't understand why there's a limited seats. Is it because the courses at Montgomery College fill up?
It's more about capacity in the local high school.
Oh, so they would actually be attending Clarksburg.
Correct. They attend Clarksburg.
Got it.
As full-time students starting in grade 9.
Okay. And then you mentioned that you do, in your outreach efforts, you do presentations to the counselors, the middle and the high school levels, and school staff presentations. And I'm curious how often you do that. So I'm just going to preface by saying, I've heard concerns. Some of the things that I've personally heard a lot of concerns about were it being very challenging to enroll, and that it really depends on the program assistant as to whether or not it's recommended to students or they have to already know about it, which frequently our students just don't know, or our parents don't know about it. So there's a wide variance between high school to high school because it's based on the program assistant. I've heard concerns about the credits not being transferred and about the cost concerns. All of those two you've addressed already. But about it being challenging to enroll and making sure that our students know about it. I mean, do we send something home with each child in 8th grade? So, or how do we make sure that every one of our 8th graders knows that this is a thing?
So for the middle college programs that we've been talking about, middle college and the programs at Clarksburg, so that's part of the 8th grade program process that we go through every year, where each 8th grader gets a letter mailed with every single high school program possibility with which these programs are embedded. So if you think about some of the other high school programs like the magnet program, some of the other CTE programs, this program is all part of a system-wide communication that goes to every 8th grade family, along with the different open house nights, virtual parent nights, the ones that are hosted at Montgomery College. So it's really part of the effort every year to communicate with every 8th grader about available programs in high school. You are right that the application process, once they get into high school to start dual enrollment, can be a challenge. And that's why we have those dual enrollment program assistants to sit shoulder to shoulder with students and families to help. And if you're hearing that experience is inconsistent, it's certainly something that we want and need to address.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I was hoping at the next meeting, maybe we could even hear from some of our students and parents. But unless my colleagues have anything else, I will let you all, because this is going to be a continuing conversation. I won't keep you all too long. Dr. Daca or Ms. Silvestre, do you have anything else that you wanted to add? No? Okay, well, thank you all very much. I do look forward to continuing this conversation and the next segment of information about it. We will move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the special education and ESOL services updates with the return to in-person learning. I've asked for an update on how those services are going as we're in the midst of the hybrid and going back to in person. So I'm not sure, but I assume Mr. Lowndes, you will start us off.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Mondrowski, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to update Special Populations Committee on special education. Today, I'll talk a little bit about the enrollment, percentage of students that are coming into school, and the percentage of students that have remained virtual, which has big implications as to the update on related services and how they're being provided. And I'm going to end my presentation today talking about the compensatory services and where we are in the process of contacting parents and discussing compensatory services with families. So if I can have the slides, please. We can go to the next one. Go to the next one. So Ms. Mondrowski, you asked to see the percentage of students that are coming back into our buildings and the percentage in the number of students that are remaining virtual. And so I broke it down into 3 different categories to share with the board. The first one is our pre-K programs. And if you look at our pre-K programs, you'll see we have a little over 1,800 students in all of our pre-K programs. When added together, and about 40% of our students are coming back into our buildings, which means that 60% of our students are remaining virtual. One of the things that I would like to highlight here is the speech resource pre-K. And what you'll see is that only 20% of our students or families have opted to come back into the building. And this is a program where our pre-K students focus in on getting and working on their speech language goals. And one of the reasons why only 20% of our students are back with us is that many of our families are happy with the virtual speech services that are getting at home and decided that it was just as beneficial to keep their student at home than it was to bring their student back into the buildings in these areas. So I just wanted to highlight that one area. As you'll see, the top program, Autism CAP, is one of the highest percentages of our pre-K programs that have brought our students back into the buildings. And that program requires many hands-on work. And I think you'll see as I go through the presentation that many of our students that need a one-on-one or intensive services, a high percentage of those students did come back into the buildings compared to some of our other programs. If we can go to the next slide, please. And so this is our kindergarten through 12th grade, and it's really through our age 21 programs. And this slide here includes most of our discrete programs and our classes that have self-contained classes with our special education services. Many of these are the programs that we brought back March 1st. And I just want to remind folks that we did bring our most intensive programs back first, which I felt was a very beneficial to our programs to be able to get into the buildings and work out some kinks prior to our general education students coming in. And you'll see here that we have almost 6,500 students that are in these programs, and 45% of these students have opted to come back in person. Once again, the majority of our students and families opting to remain home and be virtual. If we can go to the next slide. So the first set of programs, the homeschool model, the hours-based program at the middle school, and the LAD program at the high school, these are our students that are fully included throughout the school day. And so you'll see here that this is almost 11,000 students, a little bit over 11,000 students, with 44% of those students coming back into the building. And they would be included fully throughout today, but I just want to remind folks that we did allow for these students to come back prior to their general education peers and to get some support in the virtual learning with our paraeducators and special education teachers prior to the general education students coming back, because we understood that some of these students had a difficult time accessing the online learning. So we wanted to give families the opportunity to come back and get the support prior to their gen ed peers. We received positive feedback from families saying that it helps many of our students that were having a difficult time accessing the distance learning to be able to come back and get the support from in-person learning. And the last program is our special schools, and 47% of our students come back. And if you look at the number of the different types of programs within our special schools, you'll see that our students with the most intense health need, many of them opted to stay home for concern of the health concern about coming back into the buildings. We have done a great job at those schools, reaching out to parents to try to get them to come bring their students back, because many of these students also have very intense needs, and the schools would love to see them back and get the in-person support in the buildings. But we do understand that understand the families' needs of want and desires to want to keep their students at home where they feel that it's best for them to get the distance learning. If we can go to the next slide, please. So related services. I know this has been a hot topic at the board table, and we've spoken about it a few times, with families not understanding why we can't do all of our related services in person. And I hope that by looking at those slides on the enrollment, people will understand that, the majority of our students that receive special education services are remaining home and accessing the distance learning. And therefore, many of them would like to receive and continue to receive the related services at home. The students that are coming into the buildings, if service cannot be delivered virtually, we are providing the service back in the buildings. Some of the services that still can be provided virtually, such as speech, the students still receive those virtually because some of our speech providers visit many classrooms, and we're trying to be careful to make sure that if one of them is in a classroom that catches COVID, and then they would have to go out, and as a result, many classes might have to go out if they visit multiple classrooms in multiple buildings. So we are careful with our related service providers that have to go around and visit multiple students in multiple buildings. But we are providing the related services in person when it's needed and the student can't access it virtually, or when a family would like to get it in person rather than virtually, even if they could access it virtually. We also are making arrangements to provide it back into the buildings. If we can go to the next one. I just wanted to give you some numbers, because I know it's easier sometimes to understand what we're doing with students when you see the numbers. So if you'll see that 55% of our students are receiving their PT in person. When we first came back, we were only at 25%, and we've increased it up to 55%, and we continue to increase it as we're working with families and students, and there's a desire to change to in person. So this is a moving target, in the fact that we're constantly adjusting to what the students, the families, and the related service providers feel is best for the student to receive their related services. I just want to show you that, many of our students, percentage of our students are receiving speech language. If you look at the bottom, we have over 660 students that do receive their speech language therapy in our buildings. And I just want you to understand that, and go back to that first slide that I spoke to, where we only had 20% of that PEP program back into buildings. So when you see the 30%, you have to remember, what is the percentage of our students that are actually back into buildings and are able to access it in person? And so it's all relative to the number of students that have come into buildings and the number of students that have chosen to remain home. One of the things that I really want to highlight is our services for our students that have vision impairment. You know, we offer transition services to these students, and we work on mobility. And it's important that our therapists are able to go out there and work directly with our students. And one of the things that they have done is for our students that have not come back into buildings that receive vision therapy, we are going to their homes and working directly with the students and the families around their neighborhoods, because it's important that we're able to get the students out and understand how to navigate the surroundings around them. We can go to the next. Once again, when we talk about next year, we're looking at providing all our related services back in person if we're all coming back into person, which is the plan right now. And I just want folks to understand that. We are working with the virtual school, though, and working on if a family would like to and opt for the virtual school and would like to get their related services within that virtual environment, being able to do so. And so the Office of Special Education is working with the virtual school to be able to provide many of our discrete program classrooms there, as well as all of our other special education services. Our infants and toddlers program, I know you've gotten some questions on them about when we're coming back. We're working directly with the Department of Health and Human Services, and they do not have a timeline right now as to when they're going to start putting their providers back into homes. This is an interesting program in the fact that we work directly actually with the parents and teach the parents how to interact with their children. And so we're able to do that very effectively in a virtual environment. And so we have not yet gone back into homes, and we're waiting to hear from the Department of Health and Human Services when they plan on doing so. And then that is when we will also plan on going back with our service providers. Go to the next slide, please. Compensatory recovery services. So this is a little bit different than what folks are used to when we talk about compensatory services. Compensatory services, in the true sense of compensatory services prior to COVID, meant that services were not offered to a student, and therefore the school system had to make it up. Now, because of COVID, the state is calling it compensatory recovery services because there really is no fault on this one. That some of our students in the distance learning format were not able to access their services, and it wasn't through the fault of the school system, and it wasn't through the fault of the student or the parent. And so that's why the new name that we're using for COVID when we're talking about compensatory services is compensatory recovery services, because we're truly talking about the recovery of services that might have been lost in the distance learning format. If we can go to the next one. Next slide, please.
Mr. Ross,
Yeah.
excuse me. I just want to jump in here quickly for a second.
Sure.
I apologize for interrupting, but before we get too far ahead, how exactly are we identifying those? So, for example, I was talking to some parents last week who were very concerned that their special education student was not going to graduate because they struggled with, actually at that point it was only one class, I think sign language class, and it was very challenging for them to do online virtually. How are we identifying what the recovery services are that are needed to ensure that particularly every one of our children are able to graduate on time?
So this is a great question. And what's going to take place is that we're going to prioritize students that we have to really get the process sped up a little bit and discuss about the compensatory related services. And one of those is our seniors, because we know we only have a limited amount of time before they graduate. But I also wanted to let you know that the compensatory services can happen throughout the summer, even after a student graduates. So if we owe them additional services that we're not able to get in prior to them leaving the school system, we can still work with them during the summer. But what is going to take place is that if the student has not had an IEP meeting yet, then that discussion about what services are needed will happen at the IEP team meeting. If the IEP meeting has already happened, then the case managers are going to reach out to the families to have that discussion about what services were missed and what services need to happen in order to help and support the student. And so we will, at that point, and I was going to talk a little bit about that, but we're going to train our teachers in the coming weeks to be able to have that discussion with our families. And they will have, the first option would be, is the school able to offer the compensatory services at the school with the teachers that are currently in the building? And once again, the compensatory services have to be services above and beyond what's taking place every day within the school day, and the services offered every day within the school day. And so it has to be in addition to, so it has to take place either after school or on the weekends in order to help catch the student up. And so the first question is, does the school have someone that can provide the additional time or services needed after school on the weekends? If the school can, then we're going to give the school a form to fill out so that we're able to pay the teachers or pay the related service providers either for their time after school or on the weekend. If the school doesn't have anyone that's able to provide the related services, and there's another form to fill out that will come up to central office. We've actually hired a group of people to identify other folks in the system that have volunteered to provide related services. And one of the areas that we're looking at that we're working with is Saturday school. We've talked to Kadisha Barkley, and she's agreed to hire additional folks with special education certification. We're going to train them in some of our reading and math interventions. And we're going to pay for families to attend Saturday school to get their services there, if that's an option. So there will be a variety of options we'll be talking with parents about. But the student that you're talking about with the sign language, first of all, they need to contact, and I hope they've contacted their case manager to discuss what it is that student needs so that they're able to graduate. And then I know schools are in the process right now of contacting all seniors who are in danger of not graduating to make sure that they get whatever they need done in order to satisfy that need. And if that case manager is able to find someone to support that student with the sign language, then we'd go ahead and we'd pay that person above and beyond their duty day. And if they're not, then they would contact central office and we would support in that effort.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you. Great to know.
So the slides basically went through what I just discussed anyways about the compensatory services and how that's going to happen. And so we don't need to go finish my slides, but I'd love to take additional questions that you might have on updates for special education.
Do Dr. Jaka or Ms. Silvestre, do you have?
Yeah, I just have a couple simple ones. Slide 17, I don't know what AAC stands for.
That's assistive communication. So it's our students that cannot verbalize. So we give them and we teach them how to do so with assistive technology. And so then they might use a board, or they might use a computer, or they're going to use some other type of help to assist in their communication.
Okay, and I think the same slide, can you describe resource service?
The resource services is service that needs to be supported outside of the regular duty day, or not duty day of the classroom. And so it would be a teacher who would do a pull out with a student to provide the services that student needs to address the IEP.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Silvestre? No, you're good. Okay, I think you can continue. By the way, I do just want to jump in and say thank you for sharing the percentages and things like that you did. I agree with you. It's very helpful to see the numbers, both in total, like just the N for numbers, as well as the percentages. And the only other question, I did have a question about that actually, though. So anyone who has chosen, and I already know the answer, but just to clarify, anyone who's chosen to remain virtual, if they request in-person services supports or support services, they can still get that. Is that correct?
That's correct. That we've located in areas within buildings to provide related services for students that are virtual but would like to come into the building to receive their related services. And I would like to thank our principals for being very flexible with that, because some of their schools are tight, but they have been extremely helpful in finding some type of location that we can use to provide the related services.
Okay, great. And I'm going to have one more question about that. And it has more to do with the, I want to say the PE, physical therapy, and teachers, staff doing that, the adapted PE. But I'll let you finish your presentation, and then if it hasn't been done.
We're basically done, because I went through the whole process of the compensatory services. I don't think people need to see the slides. I mean, I've basically discussed what was on the slides.
Okay, yeah, actually you did. You're right. Training and communication to schools. Yeah, so I, heard from a teacher who was just concerned that the virtual adapted PE wasn't addressing the needs of their students, and whether or not, and then I also had someone ask the question about whether or not physical therapy could be counted as PE for credit purposes. So in other words, if you've got a student who has trouble walking, expecting them to do PE, couldn't their physical therapy count as their PE credit?
So because that's an individual question with an individual student, we would have to look into that and find out exactly what it is on the IEP. And we work with families on certain situations when there's a disability that doesn't allow them to participate in a class. So I'm happy to follow up on that one. And folks that have questions, I wish they would reach out to my office and reach out to me, and we're happy to follow up. I think one of the situations that you're talking about, Ms. Mondrowski, we did follow up with, and there seemed to be a misunderstanding, and we were able to work with the school and get things going where the student was able to get the physical therapy within their building. So because there was so much information given at such a fast pace, and the circumstances were changing so often, that we kept changing and adapting with the circumstances, that sometimes schools heard one thing at a set time frame in the directions, but the virus had changed and the CDC guidance had changed, and therefore our guidance had changed, and the schools for some reason didn't catch up with the change. And then we go back and we work with the school on that. And so I just want to remind folks that the guidance in the beginning did come out very rapidly. We were following the CDC guidelines, but CDC guidelines kept changing, which allowed us to change and to open up a little bit more. But some of our schools didn't get that information, and then we just work with the school. So if someone's having a concern about their individual child not receiving services within the school and they would like them to do so, just reach out. We'll work with the school and we'll make sure that happens.
Okay, and then my last question is about the adapted PE being outside for kids in our some of our highest needs kids, being able to take them outside to do the adapted PE. Where are we with that? Do you know?
So it's my understanding that all PE classes can go outside, and therefore adapted PE classes could go outside. And so I'll talk to you offline on that, and we'll work through that, because like I said, there must be some type of misunderstanding that we can work with the school on.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So if my colleagues have no other questions, we will move on to the next part of this presentation, which is the update on our ESOL program. And I believe Ms. Nikki Hazel is going to jump in and kick us off with that.
Yes, thank you. If you can put the PowerPoint up, please.
I also just want to say thank you to Mr. Lowndes. I appreciate it. I didn't think I mentioned that before he left. So thank you to him and his team for all their work too.
Well, thank you. So good morning. We're going to just briefly discuss today a little bit of data around our ESOL students, and then provide you updates on elementary and secondary students, and then share with you the decision around administering the WIDA access assessment. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Just want to begin with enrollment data. As you can see, previous years, we've had a steady increase of ESOL students. And this year we did have a decline. We do want you to notice, however, that this is the first year that our pre-K students are not included in the data. So that is about 1,800 students automatically taken out of the overall number. And we have approximately 2,000 students then after you remove the pre-K students. Also wanted to share that of our total ESOL enrollment, we have approximately 34% of our elementary students who opted to return to the school building. About 36% of our middle school students who opted to return to the school building, and 30% of our high school students. So the numbers still really show that most of our ESOL students and families chose to remain home for virtual instruction. You can go to the next slide, please. This just represents the percentage of students that exit our ESOL program through the WIDA access assessment. You have to students have to earn a 4.5 or higher on the language proficiency. And you can see that the majority of our exits are at the elementary level, usually 4th and 5th grade students. And then our middle school students, usually it's our 8th graders that have more exits at middle school, and our 11th graders who have more exits at the high school. But it's a consistent 13.5% of exits a year. And we won't have this data for the district this school year. I'll talk about that at the end. All right, next slide. This shows the ESOL enrollment by ESOL level, by elementary, middle, and high school level. So the first set of data on your left-hand side shows the ESOL levels, blue being level 1, it's your beginning ESOL level, all the way to the purple, which represents the level 4 ESOL students. And then you have your, those yellow highlights just represent those students that we still are currently in process and trying to determine their status in ESOL. You can see at the elementary level, actually all 3 levels, that your level 3s really represent the highest level of ESOL services that we provide. Noting, of course, that level 1s and 2s make the most progress with their language proficiency development. And then as they get into those higher levels of ESOL, it tends to slow down a bit. So we really are focusing a lot of our attention and instructional practices towards those level 3s and 4s to make sure that they have that English language access and development in their classrooms. Next slide, please. So we just want to provide you with some updates on the instruction and practices taking place at the elementary and secondary levels, particularly as we are in this virtual environment and now in a hybrid environment. We really want to make sure that we're being very creative about how we address our emergent bilingual students and how we address their English language proficiency. We know how important it is for our students to engage with grade level content. in order for them to access that English language development. And so our elementary team has really been building the capacity of the classroom teacher and the ESOL teacher. They've been doing a lot of work to support co-teaching this school year. Our teams have also been working with our elementary ELA and mathematics teams, curriculum teams here in the curriculum office, and really building language development in the content. And we are really seeing that is where we're seeing the most effective results for our students. In terms of our professional development, we have a really nice partnership with a consultant group called Support Ed. They are working with some of our cluster elementary schools, and it's our office, curriculum office, school support and improvement, and Support Ed working together to go in, do observations of our ESOL and general education teachers around English language development, and providing feedback and coaching sessions for the teachers. And so that is ongoing throughout the year. And we're really excited that we're going to extend that to some secondary schools for next school year. We also have a partnership with a consultant group called Be Glad, and they are providing opportunities for our two-way immersion schools and some of our non-two-way immersion schools to build their academic language acquisition and improve the pedagogy and instructional routines taking place in the classroom. We also, as you can see, that last bullet, have a lot of interventions that we have taking place at all levels, elementary, middle, and high school. And many of them are also being implemented through our CARES tutoring program. And so we are seeing some benefits with our students through those programs.
Ms. Hazel, can I interrupt for one quick minute? Thank you. And first, I want to apologize for the background noise. Of course, never fails. They're doing the lawn when we're on Zoom. When you're talking about the partnerships and things like that, I'm glad that we're doing additional outreach to have the supports available to our students that we need. Do our ESOL teachers speak the language of our, not sure the right way to say this. I've been told that you don't actually have to speak a foreign language to be an ESOL teacher, but I'm curious as to who then is communicating with some of the students if they don't understand the English.
So yes, I would say that most of our ESOL teachers don't speak another language, but so you don't need to speak another language to teach our ESOL students. Our goal is really to build academic language for our students, and part of what we do with our training is teach our teachers through professional learning how to engage students through the way things are presented, through pictures. Sometimes there are things that are translated. And so that is part of the training that our teachers go through in terms of how we support our students is, pictures, gestures, repeating phrases, things of that nature, the text selection that is used so that students can gain those concepts. So a lot of that is what we are training teachers how to do for our students. The younger students access that language very quickly. Our older students takes a bit more time, and depending on where they come in, they may be in a METS program, they may be in a self-contained program at the beginning, and then will move to be with more of the general education populations. It just depends on the student and the level that they enter in our school system. I have our two supervisors here, Sandra Blattner, who's our secondary supervisor, and Tamara Hewitt is acting elementary supervisor, if they want to comment or add anything to that.
Good morning, everyone. Tamara Hewlett, ESOL and 2A immersion coordinator. So when we talk about adding another language to your linguistic repertoire, it's really about how you scaffold the instruction. And so, yes, you would think, oh, if I speak the language of the first language that our students are encountering, that helps. Using first language is a type of scaffold, so that helps, but it's not necessary or mandatory when you're adding English to a student's linguistic repertoire. So our teachers are trained to work really on scaffolding the grade level instruction. And we know that some students will need additional supports in terms of access to some, basic types of language in addition to the grade level content. And so we focus really on making sure that the educational gap does not increase by lessening the rigor of the content, but also supporting students in the language development needs that they have.
And just to add a little bit on to what Nikki, I should say Ms. Hazel and Tamara has shared, we do have certification that's very explicit for what that instruction should look like. So keep that in mind. And just knowing that we do value culture and language as an asset, we've also looked at ways to have resources available to students. So let's say, for instance, with the My MCPS classroom, that's where all of our curriculum resources are housed in this virtual setting that many of our students are still participating in. We've made sure that there's something called an immersive reader that allows, for instance, text to be read aloud to students, as well as translation features. So we are sensitive to the fact that the culture and language does make a difference, and so we've addressed it in that way. However, like we've discussed, we do inspect our teachers, our ESOL teachers, to make sure that they're building the linguistic knowledge of our students. So it's the grammar, it's vocabulary, it's understanding how to use language in different contexts. That's important.
Right, I appreciate that. And it's been obviously at this point a couple of years, but I observed a high school science ESOL class where the teacher did not speak Spanish, and I didn't really get the sense that they were getting the full experience of science, frankly. And so I'm just curious as to how we are, looking at those issues and making sure that the students then have some sort of support for if they have to do homework or a report, or because I appreciate very much what you're talking about. And as we were talking in the beginning of this, I did an exchange program in Mexico when I was in high school, and there is no better way of learning something than being tossed into it and having to figure it out. But I don't know how you would teach something like science if in a different language if you don't if I don't understand what my students are saying and my students don't understand what I'm saying. And I'm using science as a hypothetical example, but it's just concerning.
And I'll just use one example just to address what you're saying, Ms. Sprondrowski, that we actually have some of our schools that have attempted to teach, for instance, biology in Spanish or Algebra 1 in Spanish. So that's actually happening in some of our high schools right now. That is something I think we do need to explore more to really see that if this is very beneficial for students, how can we expand it?
I appreciate that. I know Quince Orchard did that, a math class as a pilot to see if the kids who weren't doing well were not doing well because they weren't doing well in math or because they didn't understand what was being taught. And I think it was very successful. So.
And I just one more thing to add. I think that's where our work is, right? Our constituents are the ESOL teachers. However, we know that our students are in grade level content classes for most of their time. So it's really around building the capacity of the content teachers and making sure that they understand that everything that they do, all students, regardless of if you're adding another language to your linguistic repertoire, is an academic language learner, right? You didn't come out of the womb knowing these concepts and these terms. And so we have to make sure we're making the necessary adjustments and scaffolding instruction so that all students have access to the grade level content. And so some classes might require more scaffolding than others. And what scaffolds you're putting into place should match what the students need. So it's not only just about the content, right? It's about knowing who your students are, knowing what their needs are, and then meeting them there without lessening the rigor of the content.
Okay, great. Thank you. And unless my colleagues have anything they want to jump in at this point, I'll let you continue your program. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. We can go back. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. I'm sure you'll be back. If you can please go to the PowerPoint slides. And to the next slide, please. One of the things that we are very much aware of in this environment, especially, is how important it is for us to have increased communication with our ESOL teachers. And so we have really worked hard, the team, elementary team, to put together a professional learning library for our ESOL teachers. And so all of the professional learning recordings are housed in one platform. We have office hours on a regular basis with our ESOL teachers, and also best practice Padlet. And so all of those resources are available to our teachers. And I will say that they have done a great job of working with their general education partners as well in this environment. We also want to just acknowledge at the elementary level, for the summer, the focus will be again on how we co-teach. As Tamara mentioned, our students are mainly with the classroom teacher. And so how do we ensure that our classroom teachers are working alongside those ESOL teachers, focusing on the English language development. We'll also be doing training this summer on WIDA standards and the model assessments, an assessment that gives us a lot of information about the students' growth with academic language. And also, as we shared all of those interventions with you, continuing to train our staff on the implementation of those interventions. Next slide, please. I'm just going to highlight a few areas for our secondary teams. As you know, we implemented the Study Sync curriculum at the middle school level. And so all of our ESOL teachers and are implementing the Study Sync curriculum with our ESOL students. And we really want to make sure, again, that they have access to that grade level content. And so any of our ESOL students in all levels 1 through 4 will be instructed using that curriculum along with our MET students. We know that there will need to be, as we talked about, those scaffolds. And so teachers have supported us with making those adjustments so that the students can access that curriculum. We also want to just share again that our ESOL teachers in grades 9 through 12 are also using curriculum resources that are aligned to the English language standards. And we are really focused on those areas of reading, writing, speaking, and listening. This summer, we're really going to focus again on co-teaching and course options to make sure that they are available to all of our students. If you can move to the next slide, please. In terms of our professional development, we meet with our teachers on a weekly basis. Again, we have regular office hour type meetings with our teachers and our teacher leaders to ensure that they're able to support our teachers with the implementation of the new curriculum. And so that's been happening all year. We also want to ensure that we provide flexible training opportunities for teachers. So we have synchronous and asynchronous opportunities. And again, the focus really around co-teaching that content for our students, particularly in ELA and mathematics, and how you infuse that language development. We're excited this summer that we have an opportunity to have Dr. Luis Cruz, who is educational consultant and ESOL expert, come and do some work with our secondary staff on collaboration and co-teaching. And again, our secondary teachers will also focus on the implementation of WIDA and WIDA model this summer. Next slide, please. Just wanted to give you an update on the WIDA Access Assessment. That's the assessment that our students take at the end of the school year to give us more information about their English language proficiency and give them an opportunity also to exit ESOL, again, at the level 4.5 or higher. The state did give us the option to administer this assessment this year. It was decided that we would give our 5th graders and our 8th graders the opportunity to take this assessment. We selected those 2 grade levels because they are leaving elementary into middle and leaving middle into high school. And we wanted to give them that opportunity to exit the ESOL program if they chose to do so. So it's a total of 941 students who fall into this category. And we just picked our 5th and 8th grade students who were level 4s. And we invited them, we contacted their families, or the schools contacted their families and invited them to take the assessment if they chose to do so. And so we are recommending schools give the assessment on Wednesdays so that it doesn't interrupt instructional time. We will provide students the transportation needed and also provide them with any meals if they need it while they're in the school building, because even if students are not, even if students opted to be virtual for instruction, we still gave them the opportunity to come in to take the assessment if they chose to do so. We also wanted parents to know that even if their child did not fall into the category of a 5th grader or an 8th grader, they could still, it could be any grade level, if they wanted to contact the school and make a request to have their child tested, they could do that as well. So the test will be administered. It's currently taking place in April, all the way through to the end of May. And so we will have some information about students, but we will not have exit data for all of our students. The remaining students will take the assessment next school year in January. So we'll have more information about the progress of our ESOL students at that time. So I will stop to see if there are any other questions.
Sorry, unmute. Dr. Jaka, you want to start, or do you have any questions?
I don't really have any questions. Thank you for the presentation, though, and it's very nice to meet Tamara, and great to see you, Sonia.
Ms. Silvestre.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. Early in your slide deck, you had a bullet point about an emergent multilingual work group. Could you, I didn't catch what that was about. Could you explain that, please?
So that was at the elementary level. We pulled together some, we're trying to change the language, right? We're trying to no longer call it ESOL because students are emerging in their language. So we pulled together emergent multilingual instructors to come together to look at the actual content areas. And so we had a group of emergent multilingual teachers who pulled some Eureka math lessons, who pulled some benchmark advanced lessons, and basically went through this exercise of how could I take the grade level content outside of what the vendor has suggested for our emergent multilingual students. How can I, as a teacher who's receiving some of our level 1s and 2s, make some curricular adaptations / scaffolding, and what process would I use to go through this? And so they kind of recorded themselves and came to an office hours with the elementary ESOL teachers to kind of teach them how to when you're planning weekly, here are some of the considerations you should have. Here's an example of how we did this work as it's matched to content that they're going to be instructing K through 5. And here are the things that we should do on a regular basis to work with our students. So that's a work group we started off, it was a labor of love. It took a little bit, but the teachers really committed and went through the process of what it means to plan for and deliver instruction to our emergent multilingual learners, specifically our level 1s and 2s, so that they can access the curriculum at the levels that we know that they can.
Great. Thank you. Also a question about the exit data. Students exiting ESOL, I think 13% was the average. I was surprised that it wasn't higher for the elementary, given that it's such a big program. And I guess my question is that a good, are we doing well in terms of our exiting percentages, or is that something that we need to improve or increase?
Sorry, I was looking at the data and then getting back to my Zoom. I think it's important to remember that our numbers are so much higher than, if we looked at middle and high school in terms of how many students are in program in middle and high school and how many are in program in elementary. So it's percentages based on the N size. And so elementary had 18,288. So 35% of those students, about 13% of those students, 13.5% exited. So, we're seeing our highest numbers at 4th grade, where 34.9% exited, but 73% of them met the ESSA target, which means, as the federal government and the state has said, this is the trajectory of how a student should grow. We're having those numbers show that students are meeting those exits. In 5th grade, we had 33% of 5th grade exit. So really only 1,193 students moved up from elementary school into middle and high school. And when you think about 18,288 being our end total of number of students in elementary school, and only 1,193, and that's about average. When we look at the trends of how students are moving into the next level, we're exiting a lot through the different grade levels. We just see that 4th and 5th grade has the biggest chunk of our percentage, which makes sense because they're in the program for X amount of years and they're finally strong enough in their English language development to exit out. So, there's always work to be done. I will not say no, we shouldn't look at elementary. Our goal is to work ourselves out of a job and to make sure that our students are exiting. And so there's always work to be done. And I think that, the numbers are speaking for the work that we've done over these past few years in terms of, building capacity of everyone in a school building.
And to just add to that, just to add a little additional context, just keep in mind that we tend to have those brand new kids coming in elementary. So, our K in kindergarten, 1st grade, those are brand new kids that are growing their language rapidly. And so many of them will exit by grade 3. And then there are a few that continue on in 4 and 5. And then we have some exit. And so one of the things we've noticed for the middle school program, which is why we've been really honing in on it, how can we improve instruction at that level, is because we noticed that the kids, there's at least about 2/3 that are coming up from elementary. So when you think about the 3,000 or so kids there, that would kind of give you a picture of who they are. And so we really know that they're in need of developing language, but they're also in need of doing other things. So that being very important. And then remember, in our high schools, we have a lot of new kids that come to us again. So again, that impacts their exit rates as well. So just kind of context of who's coming, who's going, who's moving from level to level is important.
Well, since I have Ms. Blattner on now, I'll move on to my high school questions. So the co-teaching is happening only for English classes, is that correct? And
So
my question is, if that's the case, are content area teachers getting training so that, as Ms. Mondrowski gave the example of the science teacher teaching level, well, lower levels of ESOL students, they know what to do and how to adapt the content for them?
excellent question. I would say that we have been doing a lot of work this year around co-teaching. We've been really honing in on the work with our English language arts teachers because they're the ones that it has been a traumatic shift where they have ELP 1 and 2 with our ESOL teachers, but 3s and 4s could be in those grade level English courses. So that's been a lot of work. We also do a lot of collaboration with our science, our math, and our social studies colleagues. So that's happening as well. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done. So that's, I'm not going to say that there's not more room to grow in this area, but it is an ongoing effort to make sure that we're building the capacity and working in collaboration shoulder to shoulder with our math team, our science team, our social studies, and our ELA team. So it's ongoing work.
Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that, Ms. Silvestri?
Yeah.
So I'm assuming, in the thing where you list summer 2021 co-teaching, this was for professional development, I'm assuming you meant. And to Ms. Silvestri's point, is it offered to all staff members? And is there somewhere that we post professional development opportunities that are available to staff so that if you want to take some extra professional development even on your own time or whatever, just because you want to, that you know what's available and when it's being offered? And how do we let staff know, I guess, is...
Fantastic. So the funding source that we have right now that is on our additional monies are focusing on ESOL and ELA teachers. However, we do collaborate with our science folks. We know that they're developing an additional course for students, especially at the lower proficiency levels, as well as professional learning. So that's going to be really important. We've been collaborating with our math team as well because they have resources that are built into LearnZillion. And so we're doing collaboration, and we did that last year around some sessions for both math and ESOL teachers. And we've actually done some work developing resources for our science and social studies teachers. So again, I would say for this summer, the focus has been on ELA and ESOL. We would need to look at additional funding sources if we wanted to make sure we expanded it to everyone. We do have Luis Cruz available, and that will be open to ESOL, ELA, as well as administrators. So we're trying to make sure that we're extending so that they can hear from that expert around how do we lead this work effectively. So that's going to be something that's ongoing.
Okay, I appreciate that because, I think that would help if they're co-teaching. So, Ms. Silvestri, back to you.
I have a ton more questions, but I'm feeling nervous that we're running out of time and we still have another presentation to go through. So I'm going to maybe just follow up in an email with Ms. Hazel.
Okay, that's fine. I just have one question then, and it is in reference to one of my colleagues, Ms. Harris, and I were talking about some of these issues. And for resources, have we ever considered, you mentioned this work group, and I'm wondering if they would be looking at different ways of supporting that we haven't currently been doing. So, in other words, if for our most highly, our ones and twos, I guess as you call them, have we considered developing like a special program where they would go to get a better use of our resources if everyone's all together working together as opposed to scattered out at all of our 208 schools? Not that we shouldn't have ESOL of some sort in each of our schools, but or ESOL supports in each of our schools, but have we considered, kind of pulling resources together to provide one specialized program like we do for some of our special educations? students?
I think you're asking an excellent question, Ms. Mondrowski. And what we've actually been doing has been really trying to, this is kind of under our Miss Nikki Hazel's leadership. How do we ensure that all of our students have access to grade level standard and have the supports that they need? So over the course of the last 2 years, where we used to have those centers for high school, and there were some schools that didn't offer ESOL instruction, and then we had the same thing at middle school, the challenge that we noted was parents who did not want their children to go off on a bus for an hour-long way to get to a site would sometimes refuse ESOL services. So then the kids weren't getting the supports they needed. So at this point, at least I can speak for middle and high, we've really tried to go to a homeschool model for our students who are ELP levels 1 through 4. The only group right now that has a specific where they might be pulled to different sites, we have 12 sites, actually 22 sites, 12 at the high school, 10 at the middle school, would be our students that have interrupted formal education. So those are our MET students, what we know them as, and those are the students that are receiving those supports around the literacy and mathematics. But for all of our other students, we actually do have the supports in place. So to address your question in a different way, the way we're addressing it is we're making sure that the instructional resources, Study Sync, as well as our ELA resources at the high school level, everything is grade level aligned 6 through 12. And instead, what we're doing is building the scaffolds in. So you heard Tamara speak to the fact that she had a group of teachers come in and share ideas. We've been doing the same thing. We've worked with over 30 middle and high school teachers so that we're able to make sure it's relevant. We've also gone and visited classrooms to make sure that we can see that those practices are being implemented. So I think the experience for our English learners is that they're going to be able to receive that service and as much as possible align to standard. And what we've heard from our students when we did our study a couple of years ago is they really want to be challenged. And so that is really how we're approaching it.
Okay,
and
wonderful.
I'll just end with this and maybe we can come back and talk about some data in the future. But we've actually been studying at the elementary level the impact of having our ESOL students self-contained versus being with their grade level peers. And we actually see there are more gains academically when they are with their grade level peers than when they are self-contained. And so we are actually using a lot of that data to inform how we move forward with our students, particularly those with interrupted education. And so we can come back at another time and talk about that, but it's a great question.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you all very much for this presentation. I absolutely appreciate it. This is another one of those where I suspect it will be, I know that it will be an ongoing conversation as we transition back into schools and everything. But I thank you all for your time and for being here with us. We shall start with our final presentation, which is the preparations for unaccompanied minors enrollment. And I'm not sure if it's Ms. Margarita or Mr. Davis that will be kicking us off, or Dr. Navarro, but I believe it's one of you.
That would be me, Ms. Mondrowski. I'll get us started.
Okay.
So good afternoon, everyone, and I'm going to speak on behalf of our Associate Superintendent, Ms. Rochelle Rubin, for Student Family Support and Engagement. Good afternoon again, Ms. Mondrowski, Ms. Silvestre, and Dr. Daka. I just want to thank you for this opportunity to be able to present to you about how we support and welcome our international students, including our preparation for unaccompanied minors. So if we could please bring up the presentation. And in addition to our Student Families and School Services team, we can go back one. In addition to our Student Family and School Services, as well as our International Admissions and Enrollment team, I do serve as Director Everett Davis. And again, a pleasure to be here. I just wanted to say that we're thankful to have our DHHS partners here with us, so you'll hear a little bit more about later on in the presentation, as well as two of our DHHS consultants. So just again, thank you to them for being present and also partners in this work. I really want to stress that. So in collaboration with our community organizations and government agencies, MCPS is preparing for a large influx of immigrant unaccompanied minors, also known as UAMs, and migrant families in the coming months who will need extensive support in enrolling in MCPS and accessing other community resources. Student Family Support and Engagement is collaborating with fellow central office staff, schools, and community organizations in order to efficiently receive these new families. And we can go on to the next slide, please. So just a little bit of a profile of our international students. Our MCPS international students hail from over 157 countries, over 150 languages that are represented, and they arrive in our community with a variety of backgrounds and needs. Our student family support services and international admission enrollment is composed of a highly skilled, multicultural and multilingual team that supports our international families in their native language using culturally sensitive and relevant practices. And just to give you an idea, although we're currently focusing on the unique needs of our UAMs, again, unaccompanied minors and families coming from Central and South America, it's important that we also recognize that we enroll students for a wide variety of reasons. So if you take a look here at this list on this slide, just to give you a couple of examples, our exchange students, those who have an I-20 visa, or ORRs, referring to the Office of Refugee Resettlement, homeless, and our unaccompanied homeless youth, just to give a couple of examples. Next slide, please. In MCPS, we track the enrollment of our Office of Refugee Resettlement, or ORRs, ORs, students are also known as unaccompanied minors. These students are cleared for entry and provide paperwork that automatically qualifies them for a waiver or tuition-free enrollment in MCPS. Of all the students that we enrolled in 2019, 6% were unaccompanied minors, or ORs. So I want to say that again, 6% were unaccompanied minors, or ORs, out of all the students that we enrolled in 2019. It's important to note that this number is probably larger, but not all unaccompanied minors identify as ORs when they arrive, and many don't seek to enroll at all. Also important to note that after a child is enrolled in MCPS, the designation of OR, or unaccompanied minor, is not maintained in their student record. And finally, the chart that you see here, the pie chart that you see to the right of this slide, illustrates the breakdown of enrollment categories. Next slide, please. So as illustrated by the bar graph, you can see this is from fiscal years 18 through fiscal year 21. We have experienced varying levels of enrollment in the past 4 years. You can see the dips up and down, and this is mostly due to the political climate and the impact of immigration of the pandemic. And please note also that this data is as of April of this month, of 2021, of this year rather. So at this time, I will turn it over to Ms. Borges, who will share a bit more about international admissions and enrollment.
Thank you very much, Everett. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. Margarita Borges, Supervisor of International Admissions and Enrollment. Thank you for the invitation to share some of our thinking around enrollment and preparing for the influx of families that we're expecting in the next few months. It's very important to note that IAE is a public-facing office that serves as an international family's first encounter with MCPS. So we acknowledge how important it is that their first contact with us is meaningful and helpful and kind. It is critical that IAE continue to focus on recruiting and retaining highly skilled staff that are sensitive to the diverse needs of this community. Next slide, please. It is also very important to note that MCPS is dedicated to granting equal access to education to all students living in Montgomery County. So we receive a huge number of families with different circumstances and life situations, and we do our best to find the best path for enrollment for every one of our families living in the county. Next slide, please. This is a nice graph showing the journey that our unaccompanied minors or students face as they come into our county. The orange boxes show their entry into the country, which usually is a two-step process. They're detained by Homeland Security if they do come through Border Patrol. And then HHS, through the Office of Refugee Resettlement, will house them and help process them and help find sponsors that they then match and hope to send to live with and become their legal guardians, if you will. The blue section is when the sponsor enrolls the unaccompanied minor or student with MCPS through IAE. And students attend their assigned local public school, elementary, middle, or high, but it's always connected to the residence or the address of the sponsor who's taking them in. They have a very difficult journey. And again, like I mentioned a few moments ago, each situation is very unique, and we try and take all of their circumstances into consideration when enrolling them. Next slide, please. Just a quick picture of IAE staff. We're small but mighty. We're about 30 strong. And again, we're very highly skilled, multilingual, multicultural members with decades of experience receiving, enrolling, and supporting international students, especially unaccompanied minors. We have specialists. We have a residency specialist that handles residency waiver, tuition paying families. We have a highly skilled receptionist staff that helps answer phones and answer questions from the family seeking to enroll. Our intake specialists also spend a lot of time working with families in processing the enrollment itself. We have a great team of testers. ESOL testing or the assessment does take place in our office once we enroll the students. And then we have a wonderful team of ESOL transition counselors that not only support us, especially during peak times, but are in the schools receiving these students as they enroll in the schools. Next staff, please. Next slide, I'm sorry. A little bit more about the enrollment process. So the enrollment process is composed of multiple stages: reception, intake, assessment, and orientation. Historically, international families have been enrolled in MCPS via an in-person appointment through IAE at Rocking Horse Road Center.
Excuse me, could we see the slide?
I'm sorry?
Did you mean to forward the slides? We're just looking at one that says enrollment. Okay,
it's
sorry.
just enrollment process, and I'm giving a little bit of background. Thank you. So historically, we have enrolled families in person, but due to COVID and everything that has occurred in terms of shutting the buildings down over the past year, we have developed a very comprehensive online and virtual enrollment model in collaboration with other MCPS offices. And now we're slowly emerging as a hybrid model so that we can continue to enroll families virtually, but we want to still provide in-person attention for the families that require that in-person service. Next slide. So this is just a quick graphic comparing the in-person enrollment process before COVID and what we've developed during COVID. We used to see families in person through appointments, and students would be tested here at Rocking Horse Road Center. And then during our virtual enrollment period, we were able to work with families who can submit documents online to a Dropbox that we have. And we've been working with families. We've been thinking outside the box and working with them to submit documentations either through email or texting. We accept pictures via WhatsApp. We've gotten very creative with the tools and the way that we can accept documentation from our families. They really run a wide range of abilities and skills in terms of the technology that they have access to. IAE staff contacts the family for any missing documents and to schedule ESOL testing if eligible. What we've learned during our teleworking period is that the virtual model we've implemented can accommodate more families without the need for additional space at Rocking Horse. And we are taking a lot of what we learned during our teleworking phase to, again, create a hybrid model that can help enroll families both virtually and in person. A hybrid enrollment model will also ensure that we maintain health and safety requirements necessitated by the ongoing pandemic. Next slide, please. One of the most important phases in our enrollment process is the enrollment orientation. Once a student is enrolled, a large factor in successfully welcoming families to MCPS is the comprehensive orientation they receive in IAE at the conclusion of the enrollment process. The purpose of this orientation is to equip families with as many tools and resources as possible before they step into their home schools. This summer, we plan on expanding that even further to include helping families register for parent view accounts, applying for farms, and also we're looking into identifying some social emotional needs such as trauma, reunification, or acculturation so that we can have a better picture of their needs before they even step into the schools, and we can collaborate with schools to continue that support once they're enrolled. Next slide, please. Summer operations at IAE, as most I think know, our enrollment increases dramatically during summer months as families arrive into the county from all over the world, but particularly the unaccompanied minors that we're focusing on today. We require additional staffing for reception, intakes, testing, and orientation, and we also include additional operating hours, evenings, and weekends as necessary. Again, since we're trying to focus on a hybrid model, we're hoping that we can enroll families who can enroll virtually, continue doing it in that way, and then families who do need to come by and have more of an in-person support, we want to be able to accommodate them as well. Historically, IAE hires a significant number of retired teachers to help with intakes and assessment and orientation. And this summer, we plan to broaden our pool and reach out to ESOL teachers, possibly world languages teachers, other teachers who are interested in paraeducators who would like to work as temporary part-time staff in the summer. We plan to minimize in-person intake appointments as much as possible, and that gives us the ability to grant families a lot more flexibility in the process and not be tied to an appointment schedule. We also plan to offer time periods or windows of time in which families can drop off enrollment paperwork as needed for those that don't have the access to technology that other families may have. Also, IAE is collaborating with OTI to leverage synergy in the enrollment process. We're planning to meet with the office to see how much of the process we can do directly via synergy, such as uploading documents. We're still exploring this possibility, but those talks are definitely happening at this time. Next slide, please. IAE, in collaboration with key community and county partners, coordinates and facilitates the monthly CFE meetings that are originated with the interagency response in 2014. IAE collaborates with key organizations such as Primary Care Coalition to enroll students who don't have health insurance in the Care for Kids program. And we try to offer these at the enrollment stage so that, again, the families are better equipped with the resources they need before they even step into the school building. SFSC PCCs and other members of our staff produce resources for families, produce parent academy topics in Spanish and other languages, and we help support school-based staff in the community. Trauma-informed practices training for IAE staff and our wonderfully highly skilled ESOL transition counselors also do a huge role in helping inform schools and building the capacity of staff around trauma-informed practices. And they also provide training to teachers and supports to the METS program. MCPS is a critical partner in the countywide Unaccompanied Minors Steering Committee, spearheading the interagency county response to the upcoming influx of families. And Everett mentioned earlier in his presentation that we have two wonderful consultants to DHHS on the panel, Gillian Hubner and Dr. Maria Navarro. They're helping us spearhead the steering committee, and Joanne Barnes, Chief of Children, Youth, and Family Services at DHHS, is also in the audience, who is also a great ally and collaborator in this response. Next slide. So we want to end our presentation on this slide because this graphic is a great representation of the need for an interagency response and the need we have for the entire community to wrap around the students that we're expecting in the next few months. We need assistance with preparing for school registration, and that needs to start when they arrive, and securing health services and other resources that the family and the students might need. So having a wonderful collaboration with county government and other agencies is something that we're looking forward to and embarking on at the moment. And thank you again for having us present. And we can take questions now, Everett.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I really appreciate it. Sounds like you all are working very well together across agencies and whatnot, trying to prepare. I'm going to ask my colleagues if they have anything, but first I just want to ask a quick question about a welcoming school, and if this is something that I think Prince George's may have something like that, where students would come in, they'd spend their first year, and if that is something that we've considered doing, it would provide all of the wraparound services there at the school, as opposed to everybody being assigned to different schools.
And what I can share, one of the pieces that we didn't elevate, I wanted to bring to the attention of this team is that we are working together in addition to that last slide that Ms. Borges shared. We're also working together as an internal MCPS work group composed of a cross-functional office support team across the Office of Teaching, Learning in Schools, and even beyond that. So I'd like to take that back to them. We will be meeting with them this week just to bring an update to, again, to this subcommittee. And so that's something that we can revisit with that team.
I would appreciate that. I just think, it gives them the opportunity to do peer-to-peer engagement and mentorship supports and stuff. And we could have all the psychological supports and everything else right there. And maybe Prince George's would let you come and see what it is they're doing. But I'm going to now open it up to my colleagues because I know they have some questions as well. So Dr. Daka?
I'm not sure that I have questions. I want to thank everybody, but I supervised ESOL and special ed, so I don't have a lot of questions because I know that I was at Blair a long time ago when ESOL first started, and they had bridge classes, to help students to get into the curriculum. They had all kinds of pairing, and I know that we're doing that now, and thought it was interesting that Gaithersburg and Highland View are doing team teaching so that the students are getting access to the regular curriculum. And I think that that was one of the things that we were told, that they were trying to move away from having the kids sequestered, that they would be with other kids and be exposed to the curriculum. I don't know whether we're moving away from that or not. And I want to thank everybody for the presentation. As I said, Ms. Hazel, Mr. Murphy, Dr. Floyd, Mr. Lowndes, Miss Sonia, Tamara, and Mr. Davis, of course, and Ms. Borges. It's really a pleasure to hear from you. I especially was glad to hear about middle school and dual enrollment and all the information that was there, how much it costs, how many, what kind of averages the students need, how it works. Thank you so much for that. It's a question that does come up from time to time.
Oh, Ms. Silvestre, sorry.
Yeah, could we hear a little bit from our county partners in terms of what they're planning for the wraparound services? Like, it was mentioned just as one of the circles, but I just would like to hear a little bit more about what's being planned for.
Dr. Navarro, do you want to go or either way? Okay, so we're new as a new team, 2 weeks in, recognizing that Montgomery County is one of the highest receiving counties in the country, in fact, for unaccompanied and migrant children and families. The U.S. is bracing for a 20-year high in the number of young people approaching the border and entering our communities. So we are anticipating that we may receive approximately 3,000 young people in our system by the end of the year. That's a high school full. The majority of these kids are boys and 14 years and older. So you can see where many of them are likely to enter our school system. Of course, there will also be families coming with young children. It's going to be a range, and we don't really know who's coming until they get here. So their first encounter with county services is through the schools. And in fact, the schools are sort of at the front line of our response, right? These children are not entitled to most services that other vulnerable populations in our country are entitled to. So they are, however, entitled to school. So this is a great first place, and best practices around the country show that the importance of co-locating integrated services within school buildings in coordination with community-based partners. But if we don't reach them at schools, it makes it more difficult for us to reach them in the community. So the work of our steering committee is really to map out what we've got. And what we've been saying is, in fact, Montgomery County has just about everything we need to do this right. We could be a model for best practice across the country. We have the cultural competency, we have the political will, we have a lot of fantastic services and human resources already in place. Our challenge is that we're maxed out currently, and we're about to get 3,000 kids added to a very stressed system. So we need to, what we're doing right now is mapping what we've got, what the capacity levels are, and how they're likely to respond to this increase, and what we can do and think creatively to make the most efficient use of our resources. So this is our challenge at the moment. We're in the mapping stage right now. We'll soon be making recommendations to the board, also to the county council, about what kind of resources are required. And we're also working and interfacing really closely with state and federal partners to make sure that they understand that the burden of this is actually falling on local communities. We're spending lots of money nationally at border facilities. They're extraordinarily expensive, but in theory, those kids should be there for 2 to 3 weeks before they come to us. And we don't have an influx of funding to help us do what we need to do here. So that's sort of what we're working with right now. And we look forward to your support and your commitment. And I can't emphasize enough how important it'll be to also train up our staff, our administrators, and also our students about who these kids are, and that, so much of their success will depend on the warmth and welcome that they receive when they get here. And I think we can do it. I think we can do it really well, but it's going to take a lot of intention. So thanks for your attention to this.
Thank you. I think one thing that's going to be critical is that we design a way for them to be able to work and go to school at the same time, because a lot of these young people have obligations to pay or money to send back. And I know that we're working on a virtual platform, but as I've said to that group working on it, that they need to test it with this population. And it probably can't be 100% virtual. It might have to be some in-person check-ins. But I really, really have to insist that we have to design something, or these kids are going to drop out. So we're going to go through all this effort to enroll them, only to see them drop out because they have to go to work. So I can't emphasize enough that whatever we are building, we have to build something that's going to work for this population in terms of a special academy of some sort. I think that we also should think about supports in the schools. I know that you bring on more staffing for enrollment, but what about once they're in the schools, like more PCCs, in particular in schools that have larger populations? So that's a budget item, but I think we have to kind of prepare for that in the next coming school year. I think that's all the questions I have. I really look forward to the recommendations of this integrated work group, and let's get this right. Thank you.
I'm not sure if it's the people from TV that we're hearing, or if it was someone at Ms. Silvestri's house. I just want to make sure we don't have too much feedback. Okay.
It's my husband in the other room.
Oh, okay. There you go. Well, thank you all very much. Again, unless Dr. Navarro, if you have anything you wanted to add. My only other question is in reference to planned professional development. Do we have stuff prepared for the summer for all of our staff, all of our schools, to understand the potential needs of these students, and so whether it's the trauma trainings or whatever it might need to be, do we have any of that planned for the summer?
Okay, so you want to speak to that? I know we rely a lot on well, I'll let you speak to that.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. As some of you may know, we are in SFSC at large. We are doing a lot of SEL training this summer, purchasing a new curriculum that's going to help with a lot of this. But we're also, you might be happy to hear that we're also bringing Cultura Cura back, because these students are definitely going to need those type of social emotional support. And our ETCs will be getting trained in neurosequential practices, which they can come back and bring back to other SFSC support staff and schools, again, with the plans to use all of these tools to support these students as they enroll.
Okay, great. And I'm assuming you're working closely with the county to make sure we've got enough social workers and all of that, this social emotional supports as well. And then I just have one final point, but I see Dr. Jaka's hand up. Dr. Jaka, you want to go ahead?
Oh, thank you. Last week when the county council was meeting and Mr. Albornoz said that we've already received 70 unaccompanied minors. Is that a small number? Is that true? Where are we with that? Have we received them already? No.
I'm happy to answer. Yes, I'm happy to answer. Because of the political climate and the pandemic, as you know, we haven't had a huge number of enrollees in the last year or so. We have received about 70 students so far, but we are expecting a larger group to come in soon. Yes, and I'll be keeping track of all those numbers.
Yeah, it did seem like a small number, but based on what we're seeing at the border and what's in the newspapers. And I wanted, before I go, I wanted to support Ms. Silvestri's question or concern about students that are working, because we talked about this last week with recovery. And we wanted to make sure that the recovery program did make allowances for our students who have to work. So it's not just students who speak other languages or who are emergent, but it's for a number of our students who need to have a schedule that's flexible.
Yes, thank you for that, Dr. Chaka. And also to that point, when we talk about losing kids and kids dropping out, whether it be this particular group of kids, subgroup of kids, or any of our students that need to work and support themselves and their families, it would be helpful if we could continue to monitor dropout rates, per school, so that we can examine why they're dropping out and decide what we need to do to keep kids engaged and going on, and what other supports they need. So hopefully, I don't know if that's a monthly thing or whatever, but that we can really keep track of any dropout rates that we're seeing, to stay on top of that proactively as opposed to reactively. Ms. Silvestre, did you have something else?
Yeah, I forgot to mention that I visited a middle school last week that has a large METS program, and the principal asked that we keep in mind ESOL staffing levels, that we kind of pad our rosters a little bit, because in the previous times, they got ESOL staffing late in the school year. And by that time, it's extremely challenging to fill those positions. So I'm sure that Ms. Hazel has thought of that already, but I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
So, okay, if nobody else has anything, I do want to say, give another special shout out to Dr. Navarro and say how wonderful it is to see you, as it is to see all of you, but it's been a while since I've seen Dr. Navarro. So thank you all very much for the work that you're doing on this. Please don't hesitate to continue to keep the board updated and let us know, how our schools are adjusting, how our students are adjusting, and what more we can do to be supportive in all of these areas that we discussed today. I appreciate the extra time that you all took. And with that, I will call a close to the meeting if there's no objections. Okay, you all have a great afternoon, a good week, and we'll talk to you soon.